product we call Pyropod. So Pyra really refers to sort of pyramid, sacred geometry, and kind of the energy, that we're getting from a space which is created to really support life. So you could say it really is a sacred space. It's not only that you've got all these plants and fish. We do recommend the fish,
Right.
any kind of marine, mariculture, water culture, aquaculture. So that can include, algae and um,
Shrimp.
also like shrimps, yeah, and various, really nice food supplements, and also feed. So you can grow aquatic plants and algae that become feed for your fish, and then other like we can grow mushrooms. We're organic, really. So organic, you can have worms, you can have all of these kind of ecological food production. So it's very clean, it's very natural. Now the problem is, how do we keep that climate, warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and do it at a very low energy cost. Now, building this thing is not free or extremely low cost, or we're not aiming for some kind of, like spend almost nothing. It's not really like that. This is technology. We're going to offer kits, and that's coming now. It's coming very soon. And
Right.
so that people can have a DIY and they can build it in their backyard. We're assuming that the smallest version that can grow most of the food you need for the family, like an extended family, even literally thousands of pounds of food. So that's going to cost around $10,000, and there are going to be people who spend more, right? And also, you can build larger if you want to build for the community, you want to build for your extended family. But let's say we'd have a product that is for typical household, typical family, and we're going to be able to equip them to reduce their budget for food to, let's say, from around what is typical, is typically right now is about $15,000 a year. I mean, that's an
Right.
incredible, bite out of your food budget for, working class families and middle income families. So we can grow about 20 or $30,000 worth of food. So now you may not find you're growing everything you need, but you can grow fruit and you can grow veg, and there's quite a diversity of crops we can grow. So what we can say is probably your budget for food goes from 15,000 to, say, you're going to spend maybe 5,000 because you've got ten or $15,000 worth of food that you're growing. So that stuff, and you don't have to go to the grocery store. You don't have to wonder what the price of the food will be. The price of food's going up, and generally speaking, people, that's what food security issue is that we don't control our food. We don't control the access to food, and we don't control the quality of the food. When you're growing your own food, you're quite aware, right? You're really controlling all of the food, all of the input as you're
Right.
going.
And
So
especially
it's
because these are enclosed systems, so you know
yeah,
that everything that is internal essentially keeps itself running. So there's no need for all the fertilizers or any of the extra artificial input that a lot of agriculture currently, you know,
yeah,
needs
yeah.
excessive amounts of.
That's it. When we talk about the inputs, when people grow, let's say, if they're growing commercially, of course you're growing food for yourself in the garden. Yeah, you don't really have any costs, and people will compare maybe what we're talking about to that. But as I say, they're not going to produce much food really in terms of quantity. So
No.
in this system, you have inputs, but they're all regenerative. So the energy, the like you say, the fertilizer is not synthetic; it's organic, and so this is a very ecological organic kind of permaculture, but it's a permaculture. It's inside, right? Not outside.
Right.
So, mhm.
Just like a small scale permaculture. I mean, because what you're relying on is the bubble technology, which is essentially mimicking the atmosphere in a sense and creating a microclimate that is, low cost and very effective from the research that you've done over the past 40 years.
Oh yeah, this has been proven now in several countries, actually, right? Starting in Canada, project in the U.S. as well. But the thing is, when you really have an innovation that is like a fundamental paradigm shift, then when you look around, you might think, that what we're talking about. You might think, oh, I've seen something like that. But actually, right, there's literally no working system in the USA right now.
Right.
So this is like rare, right? And so when we talk about the liquid bubble insulation, how the solar system works, where we have systems that are operating are the places where I have taken my time working with teams, mobilizing, investment, getting projects built. So there's sort of a trail, I leave a trail of projects. But, even we're talking with people in Norway, people at the top of their, I mean, they really know a lot, right? These are really expert people. And and we were talking with an individual like that. He's at the university. He's in the smart cities. He knows all kind. With Ann Werstad, we were having this talk with this person she's just introduced, and asking him, and have you heard about these bubbles? And even that's the place where we have about 4 projects, built and running, and he didn't know about them. So of course it's very hard to know sort of something that is so recent, right? So
Yeah.
just not seen, not heard of before. And so our purpose is to plant the seed of the technology. And where the industry has been slow, to adopt this, right? Because it changes so much of what they do. But we believe families will not be slow. And this is low tech, right? This is within the capability of everyone to do this.
Yeah, and your technology's been open source for years now too.
Yeah,
Which is a huge. Just
over
shows
20 years. Yep.
it just shows kind of the paradigm shift. Essentially, the fight the innovation has to take to sprout.
Yeah.
It's shocking, in a sense, but necessary it seems.
Most of what we take as being innovation is really improvements that we talk about to things we do know about, and we say, well, okay, I understand that and I see what you've done. But it's very rare to say, wait a minute, I don't understand what the hell you're talking about, and I've never heard of that or seen that before. And a lot of times, people would rather simply not, challenge themselves to absorb something that is that new, because they're thinking, is this real? Could this really work? And so on like that, right? So that kind of skepticism is a resistance that we can overcome when people can see it and actually experience it. And that's what you do actually to get inventions out there, is that's what you have to do. I mean, when Tesla had the first electric motors, nobody ever heard of them, seen them before. He was building them in the lab, right? They come out of the lab, they're working, but it's like magic, right? When other people see it, it's a bit like magic. And today there's so many skeptics, because when we hear about technology, most often some kind of a con, some kind of a story that doesn't prove out. So this is why we want to get this in the hands of many families, really, and see sort of a general awareness that can develop. And I think Americans can do this, right? Because that's the Yankee, spirit, right? And do it at home, do it in the garage,
Right.
build something that's novel, and have some fun with it too.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, and I think we're right on the edge. I'd like to maybe talk about the bubbles and kind of how they work, and what I think that's one of the things that a lot of people have questions about. So if you want to give a little bit, um,
Yeah.
discussion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on this format here that we can probably refer to some videos and slideshows and stuff like that. Of course, maybe not today, because we're just getting started on this, but we can do that. And as we can come back and really go into depth, right? Look at each of these technologies, and really offer some explanation and hopefully some question and answer too, if we can get that part figured out. But basically, yeah, what I've invented is an insulation that is not a solid. All the solids that all the insulations we know are basically static, right? You get a plastic, you get a foam sheet, right? Or you get fiberglass roll. You put it in a bubble. You put it in a building wall cavity, right? A wall cavity. You put it in the roof. That's what we think of as insulation. But
Right.
what we have is a dynamic insulation. It's not a solid. It's not physically solid substance, right? It's based on water. So it's based on soapy water. And when people want to visualize what is this, think of bubbles. Think of like bubble bath, right? Soap suds, and
Right.
that in our imagination, that's very close. People may also be aware that foam is used for firefighting, and they may have seen foam, or and also they may have seen bubble parties where people blow a lot of bubbles, like a big cloud of huge pile of bubbles, right? And the kids run into it, and you know, at our website you can see those videos. I mean, the Pyropod website, and I'm sure at our website too. But Pyropod is the Canadian source of this particular backyard product. So and of course I'm Canadian and here in Montreal, but my partner is in the west, of Canada, British Columbia. So we've done about 3 years now developing this backyard solution, and making something small is challenging. So all my previous work was actually for large scale commercial greenhouses where you have huge roofs, right? The roofs are acres in size. And so when it came to the idea, well, if the industry is not responding and we can go directly to the people, we have to make it small and accessible to people. So this is where we came up with this small sort of dome shape. It's a kind of a vertical. Also, it's a bit. We want to use the vertical height. That's the vertical farming idea. So we get more productivity that way.
Yeah, similar, to the pyramid, right? It
Yeah,
kind of stacks up, but it's also curved a little bit, which gives it a little bit
yeah,
more volume, actually. Uh,
great. Mm-hmm. And so,
yeah, I
well,
mean,
so we've got
oh, you
standardized.
might have lost. There we go. Sorry, lost you for just a
Hmm,
second. We're good now.
Okay, we're back. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got sort of standardized kits that people can then build their own, so that we keep the costs down that way. And this becomes a hobby. It is technological, and I think also a great opportunity for families with their children, with their kids, to learn technology, and apply advanced, know-how, and basically learn about solar energy, about food, about ecological, systems, how they work. And one of the things I like to say is, well, as I say, the product is called Pyropod, but we call the pioneers, like the early adopters, pyronauts. So it's sort of like astronauts, right? Pyronauts. So in the backyard, this is actually space age, what we're doing, right? When the kids learn this, it's a science that will be grounded in knowing some very advanced principles. of ecological life support, which I think is incredibly important, because when we're going into a future where, the food system is going to collapse. Now that's another topic, delve into it another time. But basically, we're doing all this in order to give people a avenue, a pathway, a way that they can absorb know-how, that they can create their own food security. And that's very important as we go into the next years ahead here. Very
Right.
important.
Now, as you said, you've done work for like 40, 50 years now almost, and it was back in the 90s when they knew that you only need a very small amount of room if you can utilize everything appropriately. And back then, I'm sure the technology was expensive, but they knew that essentially you needed much less land to feed a family of 5 or so people, and the current, I mean, it's like 100 times less land or something ridiculous. Uh, the research shows, you know. Um, so yeah, it's
Indeed.
unfortunate that it's taken this long to get it out, but I think that, like you said, it's such an
Hmm.
important part educationally for people to be able to understand these systems entirety, because essentially the reason we got here is because we try to fix things without knowing the whole issue. So you know,
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
how we got in this food crisis, in the, like, we don't control the price of food. Food comes from thousands of miles, and the supply chain, right? When we got into the COVID, everyone became very aware of the issues of food security. That in fact we don't control the source of our food, so we're importing food. Like in Canada, we import like 90% of our food. I mean, California grows a huge amount of food for the rest of the North America, right, and Mexico and California, and we're not talking animal feed, right? We're talking very high quality human food, and it's surprising that agriculture takes so much resources, so much water, so much synthetics, all kinds of toxic inputs, and really what that is doing, most of it is not for human consumption. Most of it's to feed livestock, right?
right,
And so we have this very long and complex, expensive process to get people good food. And as a result, it's actually not good food. It has a very long shelf life. This is what they're always looking for in the agricultural sector, right? Is they're not looking for fresh food. They're not looking for food that has really nutritive value. They just want that food to be addictive or attractive or sweet, or something of that nature. And and this is why we have such a very complex, costly food system. And
yeah.
so,
As you said, we've been kind of tricked and fooled all the way up the chain. Even the stuff that looks good nowadays is probably actually the worst stuff for you in a sense, because I mean, you and I have discussed that YouTube documentary, and maybe we could pop that up again, and one day we'll talk about that again. But the genetics behind it, they've only been looking for stuff that looks good. They haven't been genetically modified to be nutrient dense or anything. So
that's right. They put the gene in these plants like tomatoes. So, a real tomato is not fresh after about 3 days. Spoilage will come. These tomatoes you get in the supermarket are 3 weeks shelf life. Now, the problem is that gene that causes them actually not to ripen, that and they may look good on the surface. Really, they may even turn nice and pink, red, orange. But the problem is that they're not actually then forming all the food quality, right? The flavonoids, all these enzymes and vitamins that are should be in our food are actually missing. and
right.
and so people are suffering, right? They're suffering from a whole lack of nutrition actually in their food. So
Yeah.
it's really a big problem.
Yeah, so you've got the wealthy people that think they're eating healthy, and now they're all getting cancers and these kind of diseases where they're like, "Oh, we don't know where this is coming from," in a sense, but it's like, it's coming from your food. And then you have the extreme poverty that is getting fed, like,
Um,
stuff that is obviously nutrient deficient, and then they have these complex things in place that, so yeah, it is nice to see that there is a solution, though, to
yeah,
the issue.
there is, and really the solution is take control of it ourselves. Now, everyone can't do it. We know this is true. Some people will say, "Well, this isn't a solution for everyone." You start with a few people. If we could get 1% of people growing their food, and I truly believe that the middle class have the education, have the resources. They're not stupid, right? When we talk about these things, they know their food is dangerous. They worry about that. Mothers worry about, additives in food, and look at all the allergies, look at the asthma. Gosh, there's so many early stage, right, development issues now for kids. It's really, we have to think that there's a cause, because it's only been coming on strong in the last 30, 40 years, very strong. I mean, really, if you plot these problems, they're just increasing, exponentially.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, take charge of it is my, is really our advice, right? Is our recommendation, and whoever can do it is doing not only good for themselves, right? But they're actually showing a way forward. They're actually pioneering the answer that really everybody should be able to exercise. Now, not everyone's going to grow their own food, but in a community, you can have someone that's growing more food because they love to do it, and so you have a local supply of that food, and that is secure. That is local, that is secure. Again, it's regenerative. It doesn't need any fossil energy. It doesn't even need any energy. We're off grid. We generate our own clean energy. We generate clean water. We don't need water supply. We generate clean water. We can collect rainwater in most places. Okay, and of course, there are always extremes, but even in those extremes, we can do tens of times better than the existing systems. So, and that makes the difference when you're tens of times better. A whole, increment. You're really in a different paradigm at that point. So
Right.
when we get families actually succeeding, and they're going to say to their schools, and some of our projects will be at schools or churches, right?
Right.
And so a lot of families will learn about this because they'll see it maybe at their church property. They'll say, "Oh, they're growing food for the food bank," you know.
Yeah, we have a couple of projects that should be, the seeds are planted and should be kind of sprouting here in the next few months, which we'll be providing a lot more video footage on, and we could start putting together some stuff for people once these projects are springing up. And I really think that once you see it and understand it, I think that it's going to take off. Like you said, that the technology is not expensive, and we're about to demonstrate it here shortly. Like I said, that we've got a couple of pods about to pop off, so it should be an
Mhm.
exciting time coming up. So I'm
Yeah,
excited.
we want to make sure everyone is aware that at this point they can order. They can bring in an order. Now we're looking for the early adopters, right? The pioneers. We're not ready for mass market or consumerism. Um, every new technology needs a sort of a base of experience with it, and really find any kind of issues or glitches in it. But as you mentioned, this is 20, this is 30, almost 40 years really that I've been building these projects, and uh, this is not complex technology. When we blow the bubble, it's a very, very simple thing. Always that tech has worked. It's worked in several countries. There's been tens of millions of money invested. Some of our projects are 10,000 square feet, 12,000 square feet. So we have scaled as well. we do know that this technology works. So it is worthwhile, right? If people are wondering, well, they can see who is doing it. So we want, that's the other thing about open source. We want everyone to share their experience. There's no secrets, right? Everyone has access. We think, how do you build this bubble machine? Yes, we can supply one, and we can make a kit, and it's ultimately you can have local manufacturing. You know, we're just talking with our friends in near Chicago about that, but you know, every place where there's 100 or 1,000 adopters, right? They could very soon have their own a local hub, right? Technology hub, where this would become a real boost to the economy of the community, and we can make all the components, you know, locally. So that's
Right. Right.
part
I
of the
mean,
plan.
you're talking about efficiencies of up to 80, 90%, and then you're talking about growing, 200% easy, from what I've seen from the numbers, because like you mentioned, it's difficult to grow. A lot of YouTube channels and whatever, they like to, these permaculture guys, they've been doing stuff for like 20, 30 years. These guys are pros. The stuff you see on YouTube, it's hard to grow anything. Even in California, I have a lot of stuff on the patio that looks beautiful, but food wise, we would have starved out a long time
Yeah,
ago.
that's it. Eh? So that's what our aim is then, you know, and again, it's not something you get done overnight. You know, this has been a long haul, you know, for the invention part of it. We're getting it from, you know, smaller scale and lab projects into larger scale, and then, you know, finding all kinds of resistance too. You know, resistance that simply shouldn't be there. You know, people, you would think people would be aware that these are critical issues for people. So why not academics? Why not more positivity? All we're saying is test it, right? All we're saying is here, try it, but
Yeah.
follow the prescription that we're providing. You know, a lot of times people say they don't listen. They say, "Oh, I'm going to do it," but they're not doing it the right way. So we do need this kind of, you know, who is teaching? You know, even in organic agriculture, universities aren't teaching it. So there's all kind of you know, individual practitioners. They all have their idea what's the best way to do something, and some of it is not science based, right? Some of it is experience based, and that is very good. But you know, the problem is that it's never it's always random, you know. And really what we need is a serious and even academic respect for um, processes that are based on nature. You know, as we say, organic, right? Why don't they say they're based on nature? They say, oh, this is organic. No, it's based on the design of creation, right? It's the way life works. Why don't we study that, right? It's to me it's amazing, but what we do study is synthetics, right? Make anything synthetic, make something that you can manufacture, and that's what they will push. If it's free, if it's basically you know, when you grow something, you know, that just gets done by nature. So you know, there's no cost on those. You know, nature is doing all this managing the planet for us, and nobody pays, you know, nature nothing, right? So so we can bring the power of nature to serve us right in our own backyard, and it's not a battle anymore. We're not out to get rid of the weeds. There aren't any weeds, you know. We
Right.
just grow what we want to grow, right? And we create ideal growing environment, and we're ideal nutrients. Now, all of this we can teach and we can learn it. And then as a community, if they're not picking this up in the college, the university, well, that's what I'm saying is we can propagate this. We can have a, you know, a service center. We can have an enterprise hub that does teach and, you know, gets people into this business. So, like for example, if you have a small system, you're feeding 50 families, you're supplying like $10,000 worth of food to 50 families, right? That's a
Right.
big